In the heart of Alamana, a city surrounded by vast golden sands and high-reaching dunes, lived a young artisan named Nadir. Alamana was a vibrant city, known for its trade routes that brought merchants from distant lands and its marketplaces that hummed with life day and night. The streets were filled with colorful fabrics, rich spices, and gleaming treasures from across the world. Yet amidst all this prosperity, Nadir felt lost in the shadows of his own struggles. He was a skilled artisan, known for creating delicate, intricate jewelry, but his small workshop, tucked away in the corner of the marketplace, rarely saw the flow of customers he dreamed of. Nadir worked tirelessly, pouring hours of effort into each piece, but no matter how exquisite his creations, his stall seemed to remain unnoticed. It wasn't a lack of talent that kept customers away, but the larger, more luxurious stores filled with flashy displays and richer merchants who had the power to draw crowds. Every day, Nadir would watch them from his quiet corner. Customers gathered around their stalls, laughing and haggling for expensive trinkets, while he watched his own designs gather dust on his shelves. Despite this, Nadir never gave up. His hands were skilled, his designs beautiful. He believed in his craft and in the future he could build, but the endless struggle began to wear him down. Every day, he would wake before dawn, work through the sweltering heat of the afternoon, and continue until the sun dipped below the horizon. But every night when he sat down to close his shop, he found that his savings had hardly grown. Sometimes a wealthy customer would come and buy a piece, but it was never enough to push him forward toward his dream. With each setback, the doubts began to creep into Nadir's heart. The first time he opened his shop, he was filled with hope and excitement. But now, as he walked through the marketplace, watching others thrive, his heart grew heavy with disappointment. "What am I doing wrong?" he would ask himself, gazing at his jewelry, beautiful, intricate, and full of potential, yet so unnoticed. "Why does it feel like no matter how hard I try, nothing changes?" Nadir's frustration wasn't just about his business, it was about his life. It seemed like everything was slipping away, despite his best efforts. Every time he thought he had enough savings to expand his workshop, something would happen. His father's health would decline, and medical bills would drain his funds. The roof of his workshop would collapse in a storm, or an emergency would arise, forcing him to use the money he had set aside for his future. By now, the dream of building a larger shop, one that would stand proudly in the heart of Alamana's marketplace, felt like an impossible fantasy. Every time he thought he had a chance, life pulled him back. "Why is this happening to me?" Nadir would wonder, looking around at the other merchants, their shops full of customers and money flowing in, while his own stall remained empty. Was it because of his efforts? Was he not working hard enough? One evening, after another disappointing day in the marketplace, Nadir sat in his small workshop, his head in his hands. The sunlight was fading, casting long shadows across his shop, but Nadir barely noticed. His mind raced with frustration. "I pray every day, I work hard every day, I put everything into my craft. But why do I still feel stuck? What am I doing wrong?" His thoughts spiraled, and soon self-doubt started to take over. He had always been taught to trust Allah's plan, but how could he trust a plan that seemed to have no room for his dreams? Was he being punished for something he couldn't even understand? His friends would often visit him, offering words of encouragement. "Don't worry, Nadir, your time will come. Allah has a plan for you, and everything will fall into place." Their words were kind, but they felt empty. How long was he supposed to wait? How many more months of disappointment would he have to endure before his time would come? The constant reassurance from others didn't ease the frustration in his heart. Each day of waiting felt like another day wasted. His dream of having a successful workshop, of being able to provide a better life for his family, seemed to slip further and further away. At night, Nadir would kneel in prayer, but it was difficult to focus. His heart was filled with doubt, and his thoughts drifted to the same questions. Why hasn't Allah answered my prayers? Why am I still struggling while others around me are succeeding? He had always believed that hard work and prayer would bring him the success he dreamed of. But now he wondered if his prayers were even being heard. Nadir's internal struggle grew as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months. He started to question his worthiness. Was he not trying hard enough? Was he not a good enough servant to deserve Allah's help? These thoughts crept into his heart, whispering doubts that grew louder with each passing day. Why does Allah help others and not me? One evening, after another discouraging day, Nadir sat on the floor of his workshop, gazing out the small window at the stars twinkling above Alamana. The world outside seemed full of hope, yet his heart was full of despair. Maybe I'm just not meant for success, he thought. Maybe I'm destined to always be here, struggling, watching others succeed. Just as he was about to give up, Nadir remembered something his father had once said to him when he was a boy. Trust Allah, Nadir. There will always be times when you doubt, but know this: Allah is never late. He prepares you for the blessings He will give, and His timing is always perfect. Trust that every trial is a test, not a punishment. Through your struggles, you will grow stronger. It was a simple reminder, but one that Nadir had forgotten in the face of his struggles. Perhaps his trials weren't a sign of Allah's absence. Perhaps they were a part of the process that would ultimately prepare him for the success he longed for. Slowly, Nadir began to realize that maybe the journey itself was part of the answer. His struggles, while painful, were shaping him into someone who could appreciate the blessing when it finally came. The following day, Nadir wandered through the busy streets of Alamana, the familiar sounds of merchants calling out their wares filling the air. Yet his mind was elsewhere, consumed with the thoughts of his struggles. He barely noticed the hustle and bustle around him, feeling detached from the world that seemed to be moving forward while he stood still. His heart was heavy, weighed down by the doubts that had taken root in his soul. It was during one of these moments of wandering, when his thoughts were clouded by frustration, that Nadir happened upon an elderly man sitting beneath the shade of a large palm tree in the city square. The man was dressed simply, with a calm presence that seemed to draw people in without effort. He sat with his hands resting on his cane, watching the world go by with a serene expression. Nadir was so lost in his own thoughts that he almost walked by without noticing the old man. But something made him pause. Perhaps it was the peaceful aura the man exuded, or the way he seemed unbothered by the noise and rush around him. Nadir stood for a moment, watching him from a distance, before taking a deep breath and deciding to approach. "Excuse me," Nadir said softly as he stood before the man, unsure of why he felt the sudden urge to speak. "I don't mean to disturb you, but I feel lost. I've been trying so hard, yet nothing seems to change. I've prayed and worked, but my dreams feel so far away." The old man looked up at Nadir, his eyes filled with understanding. Without saying a word, he gestured for Nadir to sit beside him. "Tell me what troubles you," the old man said in a calm, gentle voice. Nadir hesitated for a moment, but then the words began to flow. "I've been working tirelessly to build a successful workshop," Nadir explained. "But every time I get close, something stops me. I've prayed for success, for help, but it feels like Allah isn't listening to me. I'm starting to doubt whether I'm meant for anything more than this." The elderly man nodded, his expression softening with empathy. "It is not uncommon to feel this way, young one. But the path you are walking, though difficult, is preparing you for something greater. You are not alone in your struggles." Nadir looked at the man, his heart heavy with disbelief. "How can you say that?" he asked, his voice tinged with frustration. I've been patient and still I see no change. Others succeed while I remain stuck. What lesson am I supposed to learn from this?" The old man smiled gently, his eyes reflecting a wisdom that seemed to transcend time. "You see, Nadir, doubt is a natural part of the journey. Even the greatest of believers, including the prophets, were tested with doubt and struggles. It is not a sign of weakness, but a part of Allah's plan to shape you into someone who can carry the blessings He has prepared for you." Nadir frowned, not fully understanding. "But I don't feel like I'm growing. I feel stuck. How is this a lesson? How is being stuck and struggling supposed to prepare me for anything?" The old man leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady. "Imagine a seed in the ground. It is buried in darkness, struggling to break free from the earth. It seems trapped, but in reality, it is growing, its roots spreading deeper, strengthening itself. It is in the struggle that the seed finds the strength to break through the soil and reach the light." Nadir listened intently, trying to make sense of the old man's words. "But what about my prayers?" he asked. "I've been asking for success, for a breakthrough, and yet I see no answers." The old man's smile deepened. "Your prayers are heard, Nadir. Allah listens to every plea, even the ones you speak in the silence of your heart. But sometimes the answers come in ways we don't expect. It's not always about receiving what you want, but about becoming who you need to be to handle the blessings Allah has planned for you." He paused, allowing Nadir to absorb his words. Then, with a look of quiet wisdom, the man added, "Think of the story of Prophet Joseph, peace be upon him. He faced betrayal, imprisonment, and hardship. Yet all of it was part of his preparation for the greatness that awaited him. Without the trials, he would not have been able to fulfill his destiny." Nadir felt the weight of the words settle in his heart. Could his struggles be part of a greater plan? Could his doubts, instead of being signs of weakness, actually be stepping stones toward something greater? He looked up at the old man, his eyes filled with new understanding. "But how do I trust that this is true?" Nadir asked quietly. The old man placed a hand gently on Nadir's shoulder. "Trust is built through patience and perseverance. The more you remain patient and consistent in your faith, the stronger your connection to Allah will become. Doubt may still come, but each time it does, you will learn to push through it and come out stronger. Allah's timing is always perfect, Nadir. He prepares His servants for the blessings that are meant for them." Nadir sat quietly, the weight of the old man's words settling in. For the first time, he realized that his struggle was not a punishment, but a test that would shape him into the person he needed to become. Doubt didn't mean he was failing. It meant he was being prepared for what was to come. "Thank you," Nadir said softly, his heart lighter than it had been in days. "I think I understand now. I just need to keep going, to trust that Allah knows what is best for me, even when I don't see it." The old man smiled, his eyes twinkling with approval. "You are welcome, young one. Remember this, you are not alone in your struggles. Allah is always with you, guiding you through every trial. Stay patient, stay faithful, and in time you will see the blessings unfold." As Nadir stood up to leave, he felt a renewed sense of strength within him. The path ahead was still unclear, and doubt would likely visit him again, but he now knew how to face it. With patience, trust, and the guidance of Allah, he could overcome whatever challenges lay ahead. The days that followed Nadir's conversation with the elderly man were filled with a quiet sense of reflection. As he continued to work in his small workshop, he began to notice things he hadn't seen before, the way the light hit his jewelry, the small improvements he made with each piece, and the quiet pride he felt in his craft. The doubts that had once consumed him still lingered, but they were now met with a new understanding. Nadia's focus shifted. Instead of obsessing over the lack of customers or the slow pace of his progress, he began to focus on the effort he was putting into his work and the lessons he was learning through each challenge. "I can't control when the customers come," he thought, "but I can control how hard I work and how patient I am with the process." One afternoon, as Nadir worked on a particularly intricate necklace, his thoughts drifted back to the elderly man's words. Trust Allah's timing. The idea of trusting Allah had seemed difficult at first. He had wanted immediate answers, immediate results. But now he understood that patience was a key part of the process. Allah was not testing him for no reason. Every challenge, every delay was molding him into the person he needed to be to handle the success that would eventually come. The next day, a customer approached his stall, one of the few who had shown interest in his work. She was a woman, dressed in simple but elegant clothing. She glanced over the jewelry with a careful eye, touching the delicate chains and picking up a bracelet. Nadir stood behind the counter, nervous but ready. As she inspected the pieces, Nadir reminded himself to stay calm. He had spent so many years worrying about success and rushing to achieve it. Now he knew he had to trust the process, trusting that the right person would appreciate his work at the right time. After a long silence, the woman finally looked up at him. "Your work is beautiful," she said, her voice soft but full of appreciation. "I can see the effort you've put into every piece. You have great talent." Nadir's heart swelled with gratitude. It wasn't a huge sale, just a modest bracelet, but for the first time he didn't feel disappointed. The words, "I see your effort," stuck with him, and he realized that it wasn't about the number of customers or the amount of money he made. It was about the recognition of his effort and the sincerity he put into his work. Over the following weeks, Nadir began to notice small changes. While his workshop still wasn't flooded with customers, the ones who did come were different. They appreciated the care he put into his jewelry, the craftsmanship, and the story behind each piece. Slowly, his reputation grew, not because he rushed to make a name for himself, but because he took the time to build his skills, to be patient, and to trust in Allah's timing. One day, a fellow artisan from the market visited him. His name was Yusuf, a man whose workshop had long been one of the busiest in Al-Amana. "Nadir," he said, offering a kind smile, "I've been hearing good things about your work. People are starting to notice your talent. I just wanted to say, keep it up. It takes time, but you'll get there." Yusuf's words were like a breath of fresh air. Nadir had always admired Yusuf's success, but now he realized that the journey to success wasn't as simple as opening a shop and expecting customers to flood in. It took patience, persistence, and time. Yusuf hadn't achieved his success overnight, and neither would Nadir. The process was long, but it was rewarding in the end. That night, Nadir sat in his workshop, reflecting on his journey. He had learned something powerful in the last few weeks. Patience is not just about waiting for something to happen. It's about trusting the process and remaining consistent, even when things don't seem to be moving forward. The next morning, as the sun rose over Al-Amana, Nadir stood in front of his small stall, a renewed sense of purpose filling his heart. He wasn't just working for the sake of success anymore. He was working because it was what he loved. He was building his future, not by rushing it, but by being patient and trusting in Allah's plan. Every piece he crafted, every customer he served, was a step closer to the future Allah had prepared for him. And while the future was still uncertain, Nadir knew that his journey was just as important as the destination. Patience had become his ally, and trust in Allah had become his strength. Nadir's patience began to bear fruit. Over the next several months, his work was slowly becoming known in Al-Amana. His modest workshop was still small, but customers who appreciated the quality of his craftsmanship started to seek him out. For the first time, Nadir began to feel the momentum he had longed for. He was no longer the invisible artisan in the market. He was being recognized for his skill and sincerity. Yet, as things started to improve, Nadir began to notice something unsettling, a deeper feeling of doubt creeping in. It all started one early morning when Nadir was setting up his stall in the market. A wealthy merchant walked by, his robes gleaming with gold thread and his entourage of assistants trailing behind him. The merchant paused in front of Nadir's stall and glanced at his work. The merchant muttered as he examined a few of Nadir's pieces. "The craftsmanship is good, but it's not quite what I'm looking for. I need something with more flair, something that'll stand out." The words stung Nadir's heart, though he tried to mask his disappointment. The merchant was known for his extravagant taste and high-end clientele, and his disinterest was a reminder that Nadir was still far from the top. The merchant's comment echoed in his mind as he spent the rest of the day alone in his workshop. "Maybe I'm not ready for this," he thought. "Maybe I still don't have what it takes to succeed at the highest level." That night, Nadir sat on the floor of his shop, his mind swirling with self-doubt. He had worked so hard, patiently waiting for success to come, but now it felt as though the dream he had was slipping further away. Even as his reputation grew, the desire to reach higher, much higher, began to consume him. "What if this is all I'll ever achieve?" he asked himself, the thought haunting him like a shadow. "What if I'm not meant for anything greater?" A few days later, a letter arrived for Nadir, bringing with it an opportunity he hadn't expected. It was an invitation from a prestigious guild of jewelers in a neighboring city, known for commissioning some of the most renowned artisans in the land. They had heard of Nadir's work and wanted him to join their ranks. The letter spoke of an extravagant salary and the chance to work with some of the finest jewelers in the region. At first, Nadir was overjoyed. His hard work and patience had paid off. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. He thought of the recognition, the wealth, and the position it could bring. But as he looked at the letter in his hands, a feeling of unease settled in his chest. Was he truly ready for such a leap? Was this the right path for him, or was it just an escape from the doubts he had been struggling with? Would he lose his sense of authenticity in the process of chasing a dream that no longer felt aligned with his heart? The invitation forced Nadir to face an uncomfortable truth. His journey so far had not just been about external success, it was about internal growth. Would joining this prestigious guild truly bring him the fulfillment he sought, or was it merely a way to prove to himself that he had succeeded? Over the next few days, Nadir was torn. He prayed for clarity, but the answer he sought didn't come easily. He wondered whether pursuing this new opportunity was the right decision, or if it would cause him to lose sight of the very things that had kept him grounded in faith. Patience, sincerity, and the simple joy of creating. One evening, as he sat on the roof of his workshop, looking out at the city of Al-Amana, Nadir remembered the words of the elderly man who had shared his wisdom. "Trust Allah's timing. Sometimes what we think is the right path is not the one we are meant to walk. Allah knows what you need, not what you want." It was in that moment of quiet reflection that Nadir realized something important. The opportunity from the guild was tempting, but it wasn't the answer to his doubts. His success had been built on his sincerity, his willingness to remain patient, and his trust in Allah's plan. To abandon those things in pursuit of external validation would be to lose the very foundation he had worked so hard to build. The twist in Nadir's journey wasn't in receiving the opportunity, it was in recognizing that the test was never about achieving success by the world's standards. The real test was whether he could maintain his faith and patience while facing the temptations of external success and validation. Would he continue on the path of sincerity and trust in Allah's timing, or would he allow doubt to steer him in the direction of fleeting glory? Nadir made his decision. He turned down the guild's offer, choosing to remain true to his craft, to the process, and to the faith he had been building. He knew that the road ahead would not always be easy, but the reward would be far more valuable than anything material. True contentment in trusting Allah's plan and walking the path that was meant for him. As the days passed following his decision to turn down the prestigious guild's offer, Nadir felt an overwhelming sense of peace that he had never experienced before. At first, doubt still tried to creep into his heart. Was I wrong to turn down such an opportunity? He wondered in the quiet moments of his work. But each time he questioned himself, a quiet reminder echoed in his heart. Trust in Allah's plan. In the weeks that followed, Nadir's focus shifted from external success to internal fulfillment. He began to embrace the slow process of growth, both in his craft and in his connection with Allah. His shop, though still small, became a place of peace and gratitude. Every customer who entered seemed to recognize the sincerity in his work, and more people came to appreciate the care he put into each piece. It wasn't wealth or fame that he had been seeking. It was a deeper sense of contentment and purpose. Nadir realized that the success he had longed for had always been within reach, but it wasn't the kind of success he had imagined. It wasn't about recognition, wealth, or status. It was about being true to himself and to Allah's plan for him. When he let go of his attachment to worldly achievements and focused on doing his best with sincerity and patience, the blessings began to flow naturally. One day, an elderly woman visited Nadir's workshop. She was known in Alamana for her discerning eye and her wealth, but what struck Nadir was the calmness in her demeanor, the way she moved with grace and certainty. She looked at his work, inspecting each piece closely, her eyes lighting up with appreciation. "Young man," she said as she placed a bracelet down on the counter, "your work is truly exceptional. It has a life to it, a story and a soul. I see your heart in these pieces, and that is why they shine brighter than anything I have seen." Her words were simple, but they struck Nadir deeply. This was the recognition he had been longing for, not from the merchants, not from the prestigious guild, but from someone who truly understood the value of sincerity in work. After purchasing several pieces, the woman left, and Nadir felt a deep sense of peace. It wasn't the wealth from the sale that mattered, but the realization that he had finally found what he had been searching for all along: contentment in doing his best and trust in Allah's timing. As time passed, Nadir's reputation continued to grow, but this time it was not driven by a need for recognition. His heart had shifted. He had learned to embrace the process, to trust that every trial, every setback, and every moment of doubt had shaped him into the person he needed to be. True success was not about reaching the destination, but about being present in the journey and trusting that Allah's plan was always greater than his own. One evening, as Nadir sat in his workshop, the soft light of the lantern flickering in the quiet space, he looked up at the stars outside. For the first time in his life, he felt no longing, no anxiety about the future. His heart was full of peace. "I trust in you, Allah," he whispered. "I trust in your plan, and I trust that you are preparing me for what is best." Nadir smiled softly to himself, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The doubts that once consumed him had faded, replaced by a quiet, unwavering faith. Allah had not denied him anything. He had been preparing him for something far greater than he could have imagined. As Nadir continued his work with renewed purpose, he remembered how far he had come. His journey had not been about reaching a place of worldly success, but about finding peace in trusting Allah. He knew now that when doubt strikes, it's an invitation to deepen your faith, to strengthen your Iman, and to trust that Allah is always with you, guiding you toward what is best. Just like Nadir, we are all on a journey where doubt will inevitably come, but it is in those moments that we can grow stronger in our faith. Trust Allah's timing, remain patient, and keep working hard, for your efforts are never in vain. If you've found peace in this story, remember, Allah knows what is best for you. Stay patient, stay faithful, and trust that everything happens at the right time. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that inspire.